Okay, the engine's warming, and we'll go ahead and just check the timing. Verify that the timing mark is not at top dead center. Instead, it appears to be 90 degrees. Go around to the other side. Now this is where I had located the timing mark before. I don't think it'll show up too good on the phone, but top dead center is right under the leaking water pump there. So you can tell it's quite a bit off. All right, let's shut this down, and we can begin the disassembly. Okay, we've begun the disassembly. The first thing we're going to do is to remove the shell around the radiator. That's the chrome, all the chrome part there. I've removed the bolts that hold it to the frame. And the only other thing I think we need to do is disconnect the overflow tank coupling there from the radiator, and it should all lift clear. Okay, the shell is off. We ended up having to take the overflow tank off because the mounting hardware was interfering with the radiator. So at this point we've got the shell and the, notice the rock protector screen has been pulled off the front of the radiator. And while we have that off, we'll probably give it a good reverse flush and make sure that it's clean inside. Looks really good, here as I can tell. And next we'll remove the hoses and cut the electrical wiring free of the chassis for the fan, and go ahead and take the radiator out. So we've run into our first little problem, so to speak. On this side of the radiator, the hardware securing the radiator to the tapped and threaded frame member is a shoulder bolt with a hex head and spring and flat washer, and it came out very straightforward. However, on this side the bolt is just spinning and shows no sign of engaging the threads and backing out of the frame. So we're going to have to go to plan B and see if we can't lever this up while we're trying to unseat the bolt, and see if that works. Failing that, we'll have to blast or something else. So I was telling you that it was going to be very difficult to get this bolt out that secures the radiator to the frame because the threads were not engaged with the tapped insert in the frame member. So a couple of screwdrivers did the trick, applying pressure while simultaneously backing out the hardware, and as you can see, it did come out. The original spring is really crushed. Whatever caused this to be placed in there was not was overseated, and the spring was crushed, but we can replace that easily. Okay, we have the radiator off, and we can now see the front engine. We've got a good workspace, and now is probably a good time to mention that it's very important that you control where the antifreeze goes when you drain the radiator. I've collected it in this pan, but it's highly toxic to dogs and perhaps toddlers. Or I worry mainly about the little dog we have getting over here. It's very sweet, and they will drink it and it will destroy their kidneys. So it's not a good thing to lose control of. So protect the antifreeze you removed from the car and save your doggy's life or the neighbor's dog. Thank you. Okay, I think we're ready for the next step. Let's see the best way to illustrate this. So the harmonic damper is there on the bottom of the pulley lineup, and the center bolt is a retaining bolt. It's called retaining bolt, but actually the harmonic damper is a press fit on the crankshaft, and that's just a safety feature in case the press fit stops fitting. So if we can, I'm going to try to back this out with an impact wrench, because I have no way at this time to stop the engine from turning. So if I just use a regular socket wrench, it's likely to just spin the engine instead of backing out the bolt. So here we go. Thanks. Okay, just an update. Both the accessory pulley and the pulley for the blower came right off with an impact wrench. Was no effort at all. And there is the harmonic balancer. We're ready to install the puller and see if we can pull the harmonic balancer off the crankshaft nose. One of the special tools that you'll need to do this job is a harmonic balancer removal and installation tool. These are not too expensive. This one's made pretty nicely. It's about $60 ordered online, and I would just pull the harmonic balancer off with my bare hands, but that wouldn't be typical for most people since I'm lying. But anyway, you will need this tool to remove the balancer and to install the replacement balancer. So hopefully I'll be able to get this pulled off. The concern I have now, of course, is the engine spinning, and may have to find some way to secure that. So I'll report back. Well, the harmonic balancer came off very easily, considering that it had been on there for probably, well, I don't know, 10 years. It's a 40-year-old motor, and you can see that the rubber between the outer and the inner parts of the balancer is cracked and protruding more on one side than the other. So that's where it spun or slipped and threw the timing marks off. So we'll replace that with a new balancer. You can spend anywhere from $60 to hundreds of dollars for a racing certified balancer, but we'll go with the lower end of the scale, the exact replacement. So very good. We'll cover the next steps. I had seen some water coming from what I thought was the water pump, but it's most likely now believed to be coming from the thermostat cover. And unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess you can tell that the nose of the supercharger is right over the thermostat housing. So that means that the supercharger has to come off so we can change or examine the thermostat and replace the gasket and inspect that whole area there. So that's what we'll do next. We'll go ahead and pull the supercharger and have a look at the thermostat in the housing. Okay, as you can see, I have the supercharger off. We can now get to the thermostat housing, and I have a new thermostat and gasket coming, but we'll go ahead and pull this one out and have a look. Okay, I pulled the thermostat housing off and probably have a pretty good idea where some of the water is coming from. There's a lot of corrosion, maybe galvanic corrosion in this unit, and the other factor is the rubber seal or gasket around the edge. It was thoroughly compressed in there. I've been trying to pick it out. I don't think I can reuse that, so I've got to try to find another one. But you can see the significant erosion of the metal. It's actually gone, and there's don't know if this will show up, but you can see the accumulation of buildup inside the tubing, and we'll get all this cleaned up, see if we can reuse this. We may have to replace it. We'll see. So let me just talk about cascading for a minute. What started out as an effort to check the timing turned out to a task of replacing a spun out harmonic balancer, which we did remove that now. And while we were at it, we decided to fix the slow leak from the thermostat housing, and I have ordered parts from that. Of course, that entailed taking off the supercharger because the drive input shaft for the supercharger is right over the thermostat instead of on the other side where we could have easily changed it. But that's the way it goes. Probably in Australia and the UK, the nose is on the other side. Just kidding. So while we have that off, we might as well change out the 10-year-old water pump. So I've ordered a water pump. They're fairly inexpensive, and even in polished aluminum and chrome. So we'll change that out. And while I'm waiting for the parts to arrive, I spent about an hour cleaning and polishing the accessory pulley hub on the water pump. So while that's in place, it made it easier to polish. So I've ordered a new gasket for the timing chain cover because that's got just a very slow leak at the bottom. Might as well change it while I've got all the accessory stuff on the front of the motor pulled off. So you can see how something as simple as checking the timing can result in quite a bit of work, but it's good work, good maintenance, preventive maintenance, and some restorative maintenance. Do have one issue. I lost the threaded insert, one of them for the radiator, and that's going to cost about $70 to fix because I've got to order some riv nuts and a tool for installing them to replace that threaded insert. But that'll be nice to have that in the shop in case I ever need a threaded insert somewhere. I'll be all set to go. Anyway, all of this work is best done yourself if you can do it. If you can't and have to shop it out, it can get really expensive because of the labor charges. I'm trying to buy as many of the parts as I can from the local shops, but some of it are specialty items and have to come from Amazon and Speedway and other vendors, JEGS and Summit Racing. Anyway, that's all for now. We'll see if we can't get a new thermostat housing. That one is, upon close examination after I pulled the O-ring gasket out, is the metal is completely gone on the inside lip. So that's why it was leaking. It wasn't insufficient torque or a bad gasket. It was just completely eaten away on the inside lip in one area. So anyway, we'll resume after I get that going, and see you then. All right, carrying on with our project. The timing cover is now off. We've scraped off the old gasket. We'll clean that up before we put the new gasket and timing cover back on. We will clean up the water pump gasket area, contact area, and for now, just to hold everything together, we've got the thermostat housing flipped backwards so I don't accidentally assemble it like that. So as a placeholder, we're waiting on the thermostat and Fel-Pro gasket for that to come in, and that is about where we stand now. Not a whole lot more. I think I'm going to purchase a new front seal for the timing cover gasket just to keep any oil drips from developing there when we put the new harmonic balancer back on. And that should do it for now. Thank you. Well, enough parts have come in to begin to reassemble everything, and a couple of things to point out here. We put the new thermostat housing, new thermostat on the intake manifold, And just to prevent galvanic corrosion, or at least inhibit it in the future, I've separated the steel or die cast thermostat outlet, water outlet housing away from the manifold with just a standard Fel-Pro gasket. The outlet assembly actually comes with an O-ring, but that still permits metal to metal contact, and that's very likely what caused the corrosion and destroyed the other outlet. The timing chain cover was very easy to take off, and it's almost impossible to get back on unless you lower the oil pan a few millimeters. So to do that, I just loosened the bolts around the oil pan and pried it down, and was able to hook the bottom seal, that's the rubber seal you see there, into the channel of the timing chain cover. And I used a little RTV just to seal it along the bottom edge of the oil pan, just to make sure that we didn't have any leaks, or at least to help ensure we don't have any leaks. Let's see, the only other thing I'm doing at this point is to chase the threads in the water pump mounting brackets. They look pretty rusty, and it was very difficult to get one of the bolts out even with an impact wrench. So clearly that's going to need chasing with a tap. Outside of that, the next step will be to try to get the new Harmonic Balancer seated all the way on the crankshaft nose. And I also point out that there's a new seal on the timing chain cover, both where the crankshaft nose comes through, and as well as the periphery of the timing chain cover. It's a good idea to inspect the timing chain while you've got that off. If you want to replace that, it's a good time to do it. In this case, the timing chain looked very good, so we'll leave that alone. Alright, we've installed the Harmonic Balancer installation tool, and we put a breaker bar on the puller screw and a crescent wrench on the tightening nut, and we are now ready to just turn the crescent wrench until the Harmonic Balancer seats up against the timing gear, lower timing gear on the shaft there, and that should be it. All that's left now will be the installation of the, well, we'll remove the installer tool, but we'll install the retaining bolt and torque that to the manufacturer's specified 65 foot-pounds. And that should be all that's necessary on this particular installation. Then we just put everything back together and look for leaks. At this time, we've got all of the pulleys and belts installed, the water pumps installed. We reinstalled the supercharger and reconnected all the hoses and wiring to the carburetor. And the main thing I wanted to show you is that we replaced the riv nut that was in the frame that came loose. There's now a new riv nut installed there, 3/8, and we should be good to go. So at this point, what remains is the radiator, and I think that will conclude the videos. Any questions, drop me a comment. Thanks for hanging around.